Chapter 2759. I'm at home today, so there will be 2 updates. But starting tomorrow, I'll be busy again, so please forgive me. 170 million. Yang Kai's expression remained unchanged, while Qin Yu was surprised. 180 million. The old man surnamed Zhou roared. 2 million. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. The old man surnamed Zhou burst into laughter and said, "Boy, you're confused. 2 million. High-rank source crystals." Yang Kai added. The old man surnamed Zhou's mocking laughter was instantly extinguished. 2 million high-rank source crystals was equivalent to 200 million mid-rank source crystals. But in an auction, 200 million mid-rank source crystals couldn't be exchanged for 2 million high-rank source crystals. In other words, although 2 million high-rank source crystals was theoretically no different from 200 million mid-rank source crystals, its value was much higher. If the old man surnamed Zhou wanted to increase the price, he would have to pay with high-rank source crystals. He immediately fell silent. On the high platform, the beautiful auctioneer smiled sweetly as she stared at Yang Kai's private room and said, "The friend in Heaven Room 3 has bid 2 million high-rank source crystals. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher?" Naturally, no one increased the price. One had to know that Yang Kai only sold a 12th grade low-rank monster core to the Violet Source Chamber of Commerce for 2 million high-rank source crystals. The value of this flowing cloud butterfly hairpin was almost equivalent to a 12th grade low-rank monster core. However, not everyone could get their hands on such a thing. Congratulations to the friend in Heaven Room 3. The beautiful auctioneer smiled faintly, but she was also suspicious in her heart. She felt that Yang Kai's voice was unfamiliar, and she didn't know when the Chamber of Commerce had such a big customer. Not just anyone could enter the heavenly class VIP room. Moreover, this person occupied one of the top rooms in Heaven Room 3, so he should be an extremely important guest to the Chamber of Commerce. Just as Yang Kai opened his mouth to bid, Lu Dong's eyes flashed coldly as he sat in another heaven room. Since he had dealt with Yang Kai before, he naturally recognized Yang Kai's voice. He glared in the direction of room 3 with hatred in his eyes. After all, he was a big customer of the Violet Source Chamber of Commerce. However, even with his status, he was only able to obtain the 9th ranked room. How did that young man manage to obtain the 3rd heaven room? After pondering for a while, he said to the maidservant kneeling in front of him, "Go and call Steward Gu over." Yes. The maid got up and walked out. Not long after, Gu Hong knocked on the door and entered. He cupped his fists and said, "Sect Master Yu, are you looking for me?" Le Dongjing said, "The person in the 3rd room. What is his background?" Gu Hong was startled and said awkwardly, "Why does Sect Master Yu ask about this? You know the rules of the Chamber of Commerce. Although this Gu is a steward, this guest's information is absolutely not allowed to be leaked." Lu Dongjing smiled and said, "There are always exceptions, aren't there?" Gu Hong said, "Sect Master Yu, you are making things difficult for me." Lu Dongjing frowned. After dealing with Gu Hong for so many years, they both knew each other's nature. This Gu Hong was not a person who would play by the rules. He sighed softly. He said, "I won't hide it from you. This old master has a grudge with this boy." Gu Hong asked curiously, "How did he offend Sect Master Yu?" Lu Dongjing coldly snorted. "It's fine if he only offended you, but 3 of my disciples from the 3rd Order Dao Source realm died at his hands, and one of them was this old master's descendant." What? Gu Hong was shocked. In an instant, thousands of pairs of eyes were fixed on the high platform, and many people's breathing suddenly became rapid. The flying great ink dragon armor had been advertised by the Violet Source Chamber of Commerce 3 months ago. So many masters from the Emperor realm had their eyes on this flying great ink dragon armor. It could be said that the value of this artifact armor was higher than all the previous auction items combined. Asterisk Hong. Asterisk when the 2 strong men put the box on the ground, a dull sound came from the high platform. It seemed that the flying great ink dragon armor was extremely heavy, and many people were awestruck by it. However, everyone knew that as long as it could be refined, even the heaviest artifact armor would become as light as a feather. Otherwise, This alone was enough to reduce the value of the flying great ink dragon armor. Chapter 2760. In the auction venue, many people's breathing suddenly quickened as countless divine senses swept towards the high platform from all directions, wanting to see it first. An emperor artifact was extremely valuable, not to mention a defense-type emperor artifact. Moreover, it was an emperor-grade mid-rank artifact armor. However, to everyone's disappointment, the box, which looked like it was made of fine iron, actually blocked the probing of divine senses, making everyone return empty-handed. On the high platform, the beautiful woman chuckled as she looked around, and she said in a soft voice, "This armor wasn't refined by the current equipment refinement masters, and it came from an ancient abode. It's an item from a very long time ago, and it was accidentally discovered by a friend and sent to be auctioned off by my merchant association." As soon as she said this, many people showed envious looks on their faces. Ancient cave mansions were common in the star boundary, but not everyone could come across them. Even if they did come across one, they might be trapped in the spirit array and be unable to escape, let alone obtain a treasure from it. Being able to find an ancient cave mansion, escape unscathed, and obtain such a treasure, one could imagine how lucky that person was. Why can't I get such a good thing? Everyone asked themselves, gnashing their teeth in hatred. If they could encounter such a good thing, they would not have to worry about cultivation materials for several lifetimes. Because of its age, although this artifact armor is mid-rank, it has some flaws. As soon as the beautiful woman finished speaking, the auction venue suddenly fell silent. After a while, a voice came from a private room in the heaven room. "Dare I ask, what kind of flaws are they?" Many people from the Emperor realm had come for this artifact armor. Previously, Violet Source Chamber of Commerce had advertised that an Emperor-grade mid-rank artifact armor would be auctioned, but now, this beautiful woman was telling them that this artifact armor had flaws. Yang Kai was also taken aback when he heard this, as Kong Si Ran had not told him about this. However, with his friendship with Kong Si Ran, if Kong Si Ran had known about it in advance, he would not have concealed it. In other words, even Kong Si Ran was not aware of this secret. After thinking about it, Yang Kai felt relieved. Although it had flaws, it was still an Emperor-grade mid-rank artifact armor, so there was no need to make it too clear when advertising. It was enough to attract people. At this very moment, the beautiful woman smiled and said, "Everyone will know in a moment. Now, I invite President Liu to test the power of this armor." She tilted her body and gestured behind her. She saw a figure that wasn't very tall coming over quickly. It was Lu Qi, who was overseeing this place. He arrived at the beautiful woman's side. Lu Qi cupped his fists to the customers in the private rooms without saying a word. Suddenly, he circulated his Emperor Qi and pointed his finger at the iron box. With a series of whooshing sounds, thumbnail-sized pieces of armor flew out from the iron box, forming a long black line that shot towards Lu Qi with a series of crackling sounds. The thumbnail-sized pieces of armor actually covered Lu Qi's body in an extremely orderly manner, forming a piece from the neck down. It was a black armor that covered all the way to the back of his feet. Clad in his armor, Lu Qi's temperament suddenly became incomparably powerful, like a war god. His first-order Emperor realm aura seemed to have been strengthened, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Looking at it, this artifact armor wasn't very heavy. Instead, it looked extremely light. Lu Qi moved about on the high platform with great agility. After a while, she opened her mouth and said, "Flying great ink dragon armor. The starting price is 10 million high-rank source crystals, and any increase is optional. Everyone please." As soon as these words came out, gasps could be heard. Previously, the highest price sold at the auction was a bottle of Emperor-grade spirit pills, which was worth 6 million high-rank source crystals. But now, the starting price of this flying great ink dragon armor was 10 million high-rank source crystals. So one could imagine how terrifying the final price would be. This starting price alone was enough to make 90% of the people give up on bidding. Only those from the Emperor realm, who were well prepared, were eager to bid. Although 10 million high-rank source crystals was a lot, Lu Qi's test, just now showed everyone that this armor was not afraid of the attacks of a First-Order Emperor Realm Master. With this armor, one would be almost invincible against a First-Order Emperor Realm Master, and even a Second-Order Emperor Realm Master might be able to contend against him. No one wanted to miss such a good thing, and the competition would probably be fierce. No one wanted to be the first to stand out, and everyone wanted to see the situation first. For a while, the auction hall quieted down. The beautiful woman stood on the auction stage with a smile on her face. She did not urge anyone. She had hosted auctions many times, so she knew what these people were thinking. Even if the flying great ink dragon armor had some flaws, it was still a rare treasure. After 10 breaths of silence, a person's voice suddenly rang out. 20 million. Those from the Emperor Realm, who were still waiting to see what would happen, were startled and looked in the direction of the voice. The person in the third room was the guy who had won the bid for the flowing cloud butterfly hairpin. In an instant, many people's faces turned black, and some people even cursed the person in the Heaven Room 3 in their hearts. What was the meaning of raising the starting bid to 20 million when the starting bid was 10 million? Even if he was rich, he shouldn't be so reckless. Could it be that the Purple Source Chamber of Commerce arranged this? Many auctions had such people, and their task was to drive up the price of the auction items and arouse the emotions of the bidders so that they could buy the items at a higher price. Thinking so, some people immediately felt that the person in the Heaven Room 3 was really a prop. Inside the Heaven Room 3, Qin Yu covered her red lips with her hand as she looked at Yang Kai in shock and said in a trembling voice, "Big brother Yang, that's a high-rank source crystal." She was afraid that Yang Kai did not understand the starting bid and mistakenly thought that it was a mid-rank or low-rank source crystal. So she hurriedly reminded him so that he wouldn't be unable to close the auction. "I know." Yang Kai nodded and grinned. Qin Yu was stunned, and then remembered what he said when he gave her the flowing cloud butterfly hairpin. It turned out that he really didn't care about 2 million high-rank source crystals. Damn boy. Boy, go eat shit. Boy, do you dare tell us your name? This old master wants to see whose disciple you are. The people from the Emperor Realm in the private rooms could no longer remain calm at this moment, and began cursing one after another. Inside the Heaven Room 9, Lu Dongjing's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Although Yang Kai had just spent 2 million high-rank source crystals to win the flowing cloud butterfly hairpin, which made him feel that Yang Kai was quite rich, and that he would be able to obtain some benefits if he could really take him down, he never expected that Yang Kai's wealth would be so great. 20 million high-rank source crystals. What was his bottom line? 30 million? 40 million? Chapter 2761. The Violet Source Chamber of Commerce was one of the 2 top chambers of commerce in the Southern Territory and had business dealings with many sects in the Southern Territory. Offending them would not be good for their sects. This old master bids 21 million. Boy, if you have the guts, follow me. The old man in the private room coldly snorted, seemingly certain that Yang Kai was a fraud. 30 million. PFFF. The old man almost spat out a mouthful of blood, his face extremely ugly. Originally, he thought that Kai Yang was just someone who had arranged for the auction house to drive up the price. Since he was here to drive up the price, then he would add another 1 million, and the other party's task would basically be completed. Although he hated it so much that his teeth itched, but 21 million was still a good harvest. But he did not expect the boy in the third room to raise the price to 30 million in one breath. Not a fraud. Absolutely not. There could not be such an arrogant fraud in this world. Nor could there be such an irrational fraud. Such a crazy increase was very likely to scare off most bidders. In other words, this boy really wanted to bid for the flying great ink dragon armor. Not only did the old man see this, but most of the people in the Emperor Realm present also saw this. The person in the third room was definitely a wealthy man. 31 million. After 10 breaths, someone made a new bid with difficulty. 35 million. Kai Yang immediately followed. A sigh suddenly came from one of the private rooms. Soon, more sighs could be heard, but there was no one else who called out a price. An ordinary Emperor artifact could be sold for 15 million to 20 million high-rank source crystals. If it was a defensive emperor artifact, the price would be higher, 20 to 30 million. Although this flying great ink dragon armor was an emperor-grade mid-rank defensive artifact, it had some flaws. In terms of value, it was between the defensive emperor-grade low-rank and emperor-grade mid-rank. 35 million was almost the bottom line. What's more, such a huge sum of source crystals. Not just anyone could take out such a sum. At the auction in Flowing Shadow City a few months ago, most of the people in the Emperor realm present had a net worth of 10 to 20 million. Very few of them had more than 30 million high-rank source crystals. Therefore, Yang Kai was almost certain that the price of 35 million was enough to seal the coffin. And it was indeed so. The auctioneer watched for a moment. Feeling that no one would bid anymore, he immediately raised his voice. Flying great ink dragon armor, 35 million high-rank source crystals. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher? If not, this armor will belong to the friend in the third room. He counted to 3. The beautiful woman looked in the direction of Yang Kai with a smile and said, "Congratulations to the friend in the third room." He couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. This final treasure should have been fought to the death by those from the Emperor realm, and it should have been hard for them to part with it. Only after many rounds of bidding would the dust settle. However, he did not expect that the person in the third room of the heavens would cut the Gordian knot and take it away in a few moves. Most of the people who were prepared to participate didn't even have time to bid. They just watched the show. Having hosted so many auctions, this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. The person in room 3 was indeed a super big customer. If there was a chance, he would like to get to know him. Maybe there would be a possibility of cooperation in the future. The dust settled on the last treasure armor, and this auction was over. The cultivator in the hall got up and walked out, feeling a little dazzled. The people from the Emperor realm in the private rooms were also let out by the maidservants and left through the secret passage. In the third room, Yang Kai waited for a moment, and then a knock sounded on the door. Yang Kai responded, and the door was immediately pushed open. A maidservant came in with 2 strong men. They carried the fine iron box in, and after a short while, the goods were sold, and someone else led Yang Kai to the secret passage. This was also a way for the auction house to protect their customers. It was to prevent customers from being targeted by their enemies after bidding for a good item. There were hundreds of secret passages in the Violet Source Chamber of Commerce's auction house, leading to all directions outside Maplewood City. If one did not know the direction in advance, it would be impossible to follow. Although Yang Kai was not afraid of anything, he did not refuse this arrangement. Soon, under the guidance of the maidservant, he entered an underground passage. In the 9th room of the heavens, Gu Hong knocked on the door and entered. Lu Dong, who had been resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. A bright light flashed in his eyes. He opened his mouth and asked through voice transmission. Gu Hong could not hide the excitement on his face, and he quickly replied. Lu Dongjun got up, flicked his sleeves and left. Gu Hong stood in place and thought for a moment, then sneakily followed him out. He was very clear about Lu Dongjing's character. This guy called Kai Yang was actually so rich. This was something he hadn't expected. If Lu Dongjing really did succeed, he didn't believe that the opposite party would keep their promise and give him 50% of the profits. So it was better for him to keep an eye on him. When Lu Dongjing succeeded, he would catch him red-handed, and Lu Dong would not deny it. This was a big deal that involved tens of millions of high-rank source crystals. So how could Gu Hong not be careful? If he succeeded, he would not have to compete with Kong Si Ran for anything, and he could go anywhere without any worries for the rest of his life. After about a cup of tea's worth of time, Yang Kai and Qin Yu walked out of a small mountain 50 kilometers away from Maplewood City. Looking up, the moon was bright, and the stars were few. After identifying the direction, Yang Kai pushed his Emperor Qi and flew in a certain direction with Qin Yu. Not long after, the two of them arrived above a hill. When they looked down, they saw many people gathered below. As if they had sensed someone approaching, those people all raised their heads and looked over. When they saw a stream of light shooting towards them, they all revealed vigilant expressions. "Grandfather!" Qin Yu shouted. Qin Xiaoyang heard this and chuckled. Don't be nervous, it's Brother Yang and Yuer. The stream of light landed in front of everyone. And sure enough, Yang Kai and Qin Yu's figures were revealed. Glancing around, Yang Kai said, "Is everyone here?" They were both First-Order Emperor Realm Masters. But he had been in this realm for 100 years. How could an ordinary cat or dog be compared to him? A child sitting in a well, looking at the sky like a big well. Yang Kai sneered. Presumptuous. Lu Dongjing was furious. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Kai, who was supposed to be several dozen meters away, suddenly appeared in front of him, almost touching his face. They were less than 3 inches apart. Asterisk hiss. Asterisk Lu Dongjing sucked in a breath of cold air, and was so shocked that all the hairs on his body stood on end. He didn't notice Yang Kai's movements at all, but he was actually right in front of him. The pair of eyes that were so close to him were filled with disdain and ridicule, making Lu Dongjing's heart sink like it had fallen into the depths of the abyss. Instinctively circulating his emperor qi, Lu Dongjing tried to move away from Yang Kai, but he was shocked to find that no matter how he moved, Yang Kai was like a maggot in his bones, unable to get rid of him. Placing a palm on Lu Dongjing's chest, Yang Kai's sneer turned cold. Die. Chapter 2762. Gu Hong chased after Yang Kai without stopping, and he was so tired that he was gasping for breath. He only had the cultivation of the third-order Dao Source realm, so he was much slower than Lu Dongjing. If he didn't know the direction of the secret passage Yang Kai had taken, he wouldn't have been able to track him. After arriving, Gu Hong immediately found a bush and hid in it. At the same time, he restrained his aura and looked around. There were no sounds of fighting or energy fluctuations. Could it be that Lu Dongjing finished off that brat so quickly? That shouldn't be the case. I also chased after him. Even if Lu Dongjing is strong, that brat is from the Emperor realm, so he should be able to hold on for a while. Either he moved the battlefield. Gu Hong felt that this was very likely. Maybe the two of them were evenly matched in strength, and were locked in a fierce battle, so he didn't know where they were fighting. It would be best if both sides were injured and he could reap the benefits. If there was a chance, he wouldn't mind doing a double cross and killing both Yang Kai and Lu Dongjing. While Gu Hong was fantasizing in his heart, a faint smell of blood suddenly drifted into his nose. After sniffing it lightly, his expression changed slightly. When he looked up again, he saw a person lying on the ground 1,000 meters away from him under the moonlight. This is... Gu Hong's expression turned solemn as he focused his vision. The person lying on the ground had his head slightly tilted. He was facing Yang Kai's direction. It allowed him to see his face clearly. Lu Dongjing. Gu Hong was shocked. A chill ran down his spine and he shivered. The sect master of Broken Mountain Sect, Lu Dongjing, who left the Violet Source Chamber of Commerce auction right after him, was lying there motionless and covered in blood. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The possibility of him dying was very high, because Gu Hong didn't detect any aura. Yang Kai's blood almost froze. He stood there stiffly, and didn't dare to move for a long time. Lu Dongjing was a veteran First-Order Emperor Realm Master. It was rumored that he could break through to the Second-Order Emperor Realm at any time. How could such a master be reduced to such a state? Who did this? Just a moment ago, he was still alive and kicking, looking like he wanted to find that brat in the third room to take revenge. Why was he like a dead fish now? Gu Hong didn't dare to move for a long time, afraid that there were still strong enemies hiding nearby. If he moved, he was afraid that he would attract a fatal disaster. However, after waiting for 2 hours, there was still nothing out of the ordinary. Only then did Gu Hong muster up the courage to stand up. Step by step, he cautiously walked towards Lu Dongjing. After a while he came to the front of Lu Dong. Gu Hong looked at his tragic death, and his face was awe-inspiring. One move. Lu Dong had been killed in a single move, and there was a clear handprint on his chest. His chest had completely collapsed. There were still traces of blood that had not dried up in his mouth and nose. His widened eyes were filled with disbelief, as if he had seen something incredible before he died. Gulp. Gu Hong swallowed hard. A master like Lu Dongjing was a high and mighty existence in his eyes. How strong was the person who killed him in a single move? Regardless of whether it was the brat from the third room or not, it was still related to him. He couldn't stay in Maplewood City any longer. If that brat found out that he was the one who leaked his whereabouts, his end wouldn't be good. Gu Hong shuddered all over. Gu Hong glanced at Le Dongjing's hand, but didn't see any trace of the space ring. It was probably taken away by the person who killed him. Not daring to stay any longer, Gu Hong pushed his source qi and turned into a stream of light, quickly leaving this dangerous place. Chapter 2767. When Zishan said, "What else did the 20 or so people from the Emperor realm testify about?" Xiao Yuyang frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before saying, Tan Junhao used his Gu insect technique to control them and make them enemies with Yang Kai. But unfortunately, he was killed by Yang Kai. Wu Ming helped the tyrant and also died on the spot. Tan Junhao acted in such a despicable manner and ruined the reputation of the Divine Palace. His death is not to be regretted. When Zishan's expression turned solemn as he stared at Xiao Yuyang and said, "In that case, Yang Kai also cleaned up the Star Soul Palace, so the Divine Palace should be grateful to him. Brother Xiao, are you here just to thank Yang Kai? If so, there is no need for that. Elder Yang's action can be considered as eliminating evil for the people. The Divine Palace is too polite." Xiao Yuyang sighed softly and said in a deep voice, "Temple Master 1. Tan Junhao is an elder of the Divine Palace and a third-stage Emperor Realm Master. His death is not a trivial matter. It concerns the face of the Divine Palace." When Zishan smiled slightly and said, "Of course it is a big matter, but with the testimony of the 20 or so people from the Emperor Realm, does it not prove anything?" Xiao Yuyang shook his head and said, "I'm afraid Yang Kai will have to come back to the Divine Palace with me." When Zishan showed a troubled expression and said, "I'm afraid that won't do. Yang Kai is now considered an elder of the Divine Palace, and the coronation ceremony will be held in a few days. If he is taken away by you, won't the Divine Palace become a laughingstock? The Divine Palace's face is face, and the Divine Palace's face is also face." Xiao Yuyang said, "Temple Master 1 also said that the coronation ceremony is in a few days, so Yang Kai is not considered an elder of the Azure Sun Temple." "Who said so?" When Zishan grinned and turned back, "Little Chen Qian." Chen Qian did not say a word and raised her hand to release hundreds of talismans, which turned into streams of light and flew in all directions, disappearing in the blink of an eye. She then cupped her fists and said, "Temple Master, this subordinate has informed the Southern Territory's sects and families about the coronation ceremony in 5 days. When Zishan nodded slightly, Xiao Yuyang's face darkened. "When Zishan, do you know the consequences of this?" When Zishan's expression instantly turned solemn, he said calmly, "Yang Kai is a member of my Divine Hall. Even if the Divine Palace wants to take him away, it will have to get the approval of my Divine Hall." Xiao Yuyang sighed softly, and also raised his hand to send out a talisman. "I have already reported this matter to the great emperors. As for how to deal with it, the great emperors will decide." When Zishan had made it clear that he wanted to use the power of the sect to protect Yang Kai, so even if he had a falling out with Wen Zishan, he would not be able to take away Yang Kai. He could only report this matter and wait for news. When Zishan's expression finally changed, but he still smiled and said, "The great emperors are wise and will naturally provide a fair solution. Since you are a guest, why don't Brother Xiao stay in my temple for a few days?" "Very well, I'll have to trouble you then." Xiao Yuyang nodded lightly. "Please." In the side hall of Purple Bamboo Peak, accompanied by a crackling sound, the black ink dragon armor was draped over Yang Kai's body, adding a majestic aura to his appearance. After the appearance of the golden divine dragon source, Yang Kai found that refining this flying great ink dragon armor was surprisingly easy. It was even easier than refining an ordinary Dao source grade artifact. Now that the artifact armor was draped over his body, it fit him perfectly and was extremely flexible. Now a first-order Emperor Realm Master was no match for it. Only a second-order Emperor Realm Master could suppress it. "What is Azure Sun Temple doing?" Wen Zishan has been astute all his life. Why did he become confused at this time? Something went wrong in the sacrifice ceremony. Isn't this a joke to the world? With a flash of sword light, Yang Kai was already floating in the air. Previously, on Purple Bamboo Peak, Gao Shueting had explained all the segments to him clearly, so he knew what to do in this heaven worship segment. He didn't put a trivial 12th order low-rank monster beast in his eyes. He summoned the myriad sword and pointed it at the golden-backed heaven-piercing ape, his murderous intent locked onto the monster beast. As if it had sensed Yang Kai's murderous intent, the golden-backed heaven-piercing ape immediately looked back. With a demonic qi rolling around its body, it roared and rushed toward Yang Kai, wanting to tear Yang Kai to pieces. At this moment a sudden change occurred. A stream of light suddenly shot from a distance, as fast as lightning, piercing through the body of the golden-backed heaven-piercing ape, and pouncing directly in front of Yang Kai. "Who is it?" Wen Zishan shouted, wanting to rescue him, but it was already too late. With a crisp clang, the myriad sword in Yang Kai's hand flashed, and his figure was blasted back, retreating a full 300 feet before stabilizing his body. His face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was not until this time that when Zishan stood in front of the stream of light, Gao Shueting also came to Yang Kai's side in an instant, shielding him behind her, her beautiful eyes staring vigilantly at the newcomer. Pung. With a muffled sound, the golden-backed heaven-piercing ape, which was still full of vigor a moment ago, suddenly burst into a cloud of blood mist, dripping in mid-air, not even leaving a corpse behind. Everyone was dumbfounded and stood up together. No one had expected that someone would come out to cause trouble during the last segment of the ceremony. Moreover, that person had killed the sacrificial object in an instant. Not only that, he had also injured the main character of today's ceremony. This was a public slap in the face of Azure Sun Temple. How could this be tolerated? However, to be able to turn a 12th order monster beast golden-backed heaven-piercing ape into a cloud of blood mist in one blow, this cultivation was shocking enough. Among all the people in the Emperor realm present, there were definitely no more than 3 people who could do this. Who dared to be so arrogant? Looking over, everyone could not help but be stunned, faintly feeling that today's coronation ceremony would not end peacefully. Elder Shui. Wen Zishan's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the newcomer, his tone low and his face a little ugly. As a senior, Elder Shui won't be so stingy, right? Shui Jingmao's face darkened as he immediately remembered what Yang Kai had said before about returning the favor. It was indeed so. When he arrived, he launched a sneak attack on Yang Kai without saying a word. How could he not allow others to launch a sneak attack on him? But this matter absolutely couldn't end like this. He couldn't swallow the anger in his chest. Turning his head and staring to the side, Shui Jingmao called out, "Elder Xiao." Xiao Yuyang sighed, took a few steps, and instantly came to Shui Jingmao's side. Now that things had gotten to this point, it was no longer something that he could just stand by and watch. This was not only related to Shui Jingmao's own face, it was also related to the face of Star Soul Palace. So he had to stand with Shui Jingmao. Entangle Wen Zishan. This old master wants that little brat dead. Shui Jingmao transmitted. Xiao Yuyang replied, "It's not a problem to entangle Wen Zishan, but you can't kill that little brat. You underestimate this old master?" Shui Jingmao's chest was filled with anger, like a brewing volcano that could erupt at any time. It was just this old master being careless just now. "I'm not underestimating you. That little brat is proficient in the space divine technique. Without a perfect arrangement, no one can take him down. Space divine technique." Shui Jingmao's eyes narrowed as a sense of powerlessness welled up in the depths of his heart. As an elder of Star Soul Palace, he was no stranger to the space divine technique. In the past, a guy named Li Wuyi offended the Flower Shadow Great Emperors, and was chased down by the Great Emperors. In the end he escaped with his life, relying on the space divine technique. Later, the martial beast came forward to intercede for him, and the Flower Shadow Great Emperors let him go. Until now, Li Wuyi was still alive and well, living freely on Spirit Beast Island. If Yang Kai was really proficient in the space divine technique, Shui Jingmao really couldn't do anything to him. Shui Jingmao frowned as he was in a difficult position. The two great elders of Star Soul Palace stood side by side, and everyone's expression changed. Wen Zishan's expression was unprecedentedly solemn, and many of Azure Sun Temple's disciples from the Emperor realm surrounded Yang Kai tightly, their faces full of vigilance. No one expected a crowning ceremony to turn out like this. Elder Shui, Elder Xiao, do you insist on this? Wen Zishan said in a low voice. Although my temple is not as good as Star Soul Palace, we are not pushovers. Xiao Yuyang didn't say a word, and neither did Shui Jingmao, who just glared angrily at Yang Kai. The other guests who came to watch the ceremony were all on tenterhooks, fearing that the two sides would really fight. Once Star Soul Palace and Azure Sun Temple shed all pretense of cordiality, the entire Southern Territory would be in turmoil for a while, and it wouldn't be good for anyone. An oppressive and tense atmosphere spread throughout the hall, and the younger generation brought by the Emperor realm were all sweating and pale. Stop! In the distance a soft shout came. The voice was crisp and pleasant, and seemed to have a magical power that made people's tense nerves inexplicably relax. The moment he heard this voice, Xiao Chun, who was staring at Yang Kai with a complicated gaze, suddenly woke up and immediately looked to the side with bright eyes. He saw a ribbon come out of thin air, and a beautiful woman with picturesque features stood on the ribbon. There was a red cinnabar dot between her eyebrows, and her black hair was combed into a double moon bun with a few strands of long hair hanging in front of her chest. She wore a light yellow dress, which made her look more elegant and refined. With a light tap of her jade foot, she landed lightly on Myriad Saint's peak. Princess! Xiao Chen cried out in surprise. Chapter 2770. Lan Sun was the daughter of the great emperors. Not to mention the fact that she was beautiful enough to make any man's heart beat faster. Even if she was ugly, if one could win her favor, they would have to struggle a few hundred years less. Seeing this scene, Xiao Chen's face suddenly sank. He snorted softly, and took the initiative to greet Lan Sun. When he got closer, he showed a gentle smile and said softly, "Princess, why are you here?" Lan Sun gently nodded at him as a greeting. Then her face turned solemn, and her red lips opened slightly. "By order of the great emperors, I am here to pass on the oral decree of the great emperors." Everyone's expression turned solemn when they heard this. Although there were 10 great emperors in this world, the great emperors mentioned by Lan Sun were undoubtedly the master of Star Soul Palace, the Bright Moon Great Emperors. They were also the stabilizing force of the entire Southern Territory. Just as the wondrous Pill Great Emperors were respected in the Northern Territory, the Bright Moon Great Emperors were also respected in the Southern Territory. We respectfully welcome the decree of the Great Emperors. When Zishan's expression was solemn as he shouted, many guests also looked solemn and listened attentively. Lan Sun said, "This is not the place to talk. Would Uncle Wen please prepare a secret room?" She was obviously saying that there were too many people here. But the guests who came to watch the ceremony did not dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. To some extent, Lan Sun now represented the Bright Moon Great Emperors. So who would dare to be disrespectful? "This way, please." When Zishan turned sideways and gestured to the back, Lan Sun nodded slightly and took the lead to walk towards the palace in front. When she passed by Yang Kai, she paused and turned her head. "Brother Yang, come here." Yang Kai pondered for a moment and stepped forward to follow. Lan Sun's appearance here was definitely related to him, so he had to follow. Xiao Yuyang and Shui Jingmao looked at each other and also followed behind Lan Sun. Xiao Chun, the flower protector, naturally did not fall behind. After a while, a group of people entered the main hall. When Zishan waved his hand, the door immediately closed. Lan Sun stepped onto the high platform of the hall before turning around and looking down at the 3 great emperors. The 2 juniors, Yang Kai and Xiao Chun, stood on opposite sides. With a smile, Lan Sun looked at Yang Kai and said, "Congratulations, Brother Yang. From today onwards, you are an elder of Azure Sun Temple." As soon as this statement came out, both Xiao Yuyang and Shui Jingmao frowned. The information revealed by these words made them vaguely aware of something. Yang Kai said, Your Highness is too polite. Lan Sun said angrily. Brother Yang, why are you being so formal? Little sister Little Seven and I are as close as sisters. You treat Little Seven like an elder brother, so just call me Lan Sun. How dare he? Xiao Chen immediately widened his eyes. How could any random man enjoy such an intimate address? He and Lan Sun grew up together, and until now, he had only called her that in private. When there were outsiders, he still maintained the distinction between seniority and inferiority. Since Lan Sun said so, then I won't be unreasonable. Congratulations on your promotion to the Emperor realm. Yang Kai glanced at Xiao Chen as he spoke. It almost made him explode with anger. The three great emperors present, on the other hand, were all taken aback. First, it was Lan Sun's attitude towards Yang Kai. Second, it was Lan Sun's words. A person who could make Lan Sun treat him like a sister was definitely not an ordinary existence. Little Seven? Xiao Yuyang murmured. Could it be the girl from Spirit Beast Island? Shuijing Mao and Wen Zishan suddenly came back to their senses and looked at Yang Kai in surprise. They did not expect Yang Kai to have a relationship with the princess of Spirit Beast Island. And from what Lan Sun said, it was not an ordinary relationship. It's that girl from Spirit Beast Island. Lan Sun covered her mouth and smiled. I'm afraid the few of you don't know, but little sister Xiaoqi and senior brother Yang are very close. Previously, when I went to Spirit Beast Island with my father, that little girl even asked me about senior brother Yang. Unfortunately, brother Yang is a mysterious dragon, so I couldn't tell her anything. She was very disappointed. With the relationship between Mo Xiaoqi and Lan Sun, even if she knew about Yang Kai, she probably wouldn't tell her. Lan Sun's words were plain, but they set off stormy waves in the hearts of the third-stage emperors. Mo Xiaoqi herself was nothing, but the one above her could not be ignored. That was an existence on par with the great emperors of Bright Moon. Yang Kai and Mo Xiaoqi had such a good relationship that it was equivalent to climbing the towering tree that was Spirit Beast Island. If they wanted to touch him, they would have to think twice. The great emperors of Bright Moon doted on Lan Sun very much, and the martial beast also doted on Mo Xiaoqi very much. If their own girl whispered something into their ears, even the great emperor's ears would soften. At this moment, Shuijing Mao couldn't help but feel a little lucky. Fortunately, he didn't do anything to Yang Kai before. Otherwise, he might not be able to clean up this mess. Tan Junhao's matter could only be dealt with by the great emperors. With a thought, Shuijing Mao asked, Princess, what instructions do the great emperors have? Although he had some guesses, he still had to ask. Wen Zishan and Xiao Yuyang also looked up at Lan Sun. Lan Sun's expression turned solemn as she said, Tan Junhao, as an elder of Star Soul Palace, not only did he fail to set an example for the millions of cultivators in the Southern Territory, he even went against the law and harmed the Southern Territory's emperors. Wu Ming acted as an accomplice to the villain and aided the tyrant. The great emperors have already investigated this matter, and the death of these two is not to be regretted. The great emperors have ordered that the matter of Tan Junhao and Wu Ming ends here. No one is allowed to cause any more trouble. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Yuyang and Shuijing Mao cupped their fists and bowed. We obey the decree of the great emperors. When Zishan grinned and cupped his fists, Great emperors are wise, great emperors are mighty. Yang Kai also said, Many thanks, great emperors. He was completely relieved in his heart. Those who could become great emperors were really broad-minded. With this order from the great emperors, Yang Kai no longer had to worry about anything in the future. However, it stood to reason that Star Soul Palace should be grateful to Yang Kai for killing Tan Junhao and Wu Ming. But these were all trivial matters. After all, Star Soul Palace was the overlord of the Southern Territory. Although there was a reason for the killing of their elders and deacons, it was already magnanimous of them not to pursue the matter. How could they still be grateful? There is one more thing that father has entrusted me to discuss with brother Yang. Lan Sun's gaze turned and fixed on Yang Kai. Everyone keenly grasped the change in the way she addressed the great emperors in her words. Since Lan Sun's arrival, she had always addressed him as the great emperors, but just now she had changed it to father. In other words, the matter to be discussed next was not as the great emperors. May I ask what it is? Yang Kai asked. Lan Sun said, "Father wants to know where Tan Junhao's golden armored heavenly book is now." As soon as she said this, everyone in the hall focused their eyes on Yang Kai. Obviously, all the third-layer Emperor Realm Masters present knew about the golden armored heavenly book and the existence of this Emperor artifact. Although there were many Emperor artifacts in the star boundary, there were only a few famous Emperor artifacts. For example, the Mountains and Rivers Bell in Yang Kai's hand was an ancient exotic treasure that even the great emperors coveted. Although Tan Junhao's golden armored heavenly book was not as good as the Mountains and Rivers Bell, it was not an ordinary emperor artifact, but a top-grade one. Yang Kai frowned as a bad feeling welled up in the depths of his heart, but he finally said, "The golden armored heavenly book is with me." Saying so, he took out the golden armored heavenly book and held it in the palm of his hand. The dazzling golden light instantly attracted the attention of several pairs of eyes. Lan Sun nodded and said softly, "It's like this, Brother Yang. Father hopes that you can return the golden armored heavenly book to me and bring it back." As soon as she said this, Yang Kai's face sank as he understood that his hunch had come true. He was well aware of the power of this golden armored heavenly book. When he was fighting Tan Junhao, if he had not underestimated his opponent, he would have only needed to display the full power of this golden armored heavenly book. If Yang Kai wanted to kill him, he would have had to pay a much greater price. Yang Kai naturally did not want to give up such a good treasure. Moreover, he had refined the golden armored heavenly book for a while, and could use one or two divine secret techniques. So he was very fond of this thing. Now, Lan Sun wanted him to return it with just a few words, which was really unacceptable to him. If he did not return it, there would be no benefits. But he knew that since this was a negotiation, Star Soul Palace would never use force. Looking up at Lan Sun, Yang Kai wanted to hear what she had to say next. "The golden armored heavenly book is Brother Yang's spoils of war. Logically speaking, my Star Soul Palace has no right to ask you to hand it over. However, Brother Yang knows that this golden armored heavenly book is not only an emperor artifact, but also the key to open a sealed world in my Star Soul Palace." The key to open a sealed world? Yang Kai was stunned. "Yes." Lan Sun nodded slightly. "My Star Soul Palace has a sealed world called the Great Illusionary Realm. It is an independent small world that can only be opened by the golden armored heavenly book. Elder Xiao and Elder Shui also know this." Xiao Yu Yang and Shui Jing Mao both nodded, indicating that Lan Sun was telling the truth. Great Illusionary Realm. I know about this sealed world." When Zishan also echoed, "I just didn't expect that this sealed world would require the golden armored heavenly book to open. In the past, this sealed world was under the control of Tan Junhao, so the golden armored heavenly book is in his hands." Without waiting for Yang Kai to settle down, Gao Shueting suddenly waved her hand, and hundreds of jars of fine wine were placed on the ground. She then said in a forthright manner, "The temple has gained another elder. Today, we won't leave until we're drunk." As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Chen Qian's pretty face turned pale. "Senior sister, don't be impulsive." Di Rong's face also changed, and his body involuntarily stepped back, saying, "I suddenly remembered that the temple master is looking for me, so I'll go first." Gao Shueting squinted her eyes, and a sound came out of her nostrils. Di Rong suddenly stiffened and turned to look at Yu Kuan, hoping that he could save him from this disaster. However, he saw that Yu Kuan was sweating and his face was pale.